The potting compound should be applied only to the number 8 wire in the forming shell, specifically where it connects to the polyvinyl chloride conduit leading to the junction box. Applying potting compound elsewhere within the forming shell or the light fixture itself is unnecessary and potentially detrimental. Wet niche luminaires and their corresponding forming shells are meticulously engineered not to permit water entry, but rather to create a watertight barrier, safeguarding the electrical components from water damage. This design simultaneously facilitates heat dissipation, a critical factor in the safe and efficient operation of the lighting system. Water intrusion into the forming shell poses significant electrical hazards and risks damaging the light fixture. The application of potting compound around the number 8 wire establishes a watertight seal at the electrical connection point between the light and the junction box. This seal effectively prevents water from migrating into the forming shell. The remaining areas within the forming shell and the light itself are designed to remain dry. This allows heat to escape from the light and transfer into the surrounding water, preventing overheating and ensuring the continued safe and reliable operation of the light. Understanding these design principles is crucial for ensuring both electrical safety and the longevity of the underwater lighting system. Ignoring these guidelines could lead to premature failure of the lighting system or, more seriously, pose a shock hazard to anyone in the pool. It is also very important to use the correct potting compound that is rated for underwater use and compatible with the materials of the forming shell and the wire insulation. Check the manufacturer's recommendations for the appropriate potting compound to use. Do not substitute with any other materials. When installing or servicing a wet niche luminaire, always disconnect the power supply at the circuit breaker to prevent accidental electrical shock. Ensure that all electrical connections are properly tightened and sealed to prevent water ingress. Regularly inspect the forming shell and the light fixture for any signs of damage or corrosion. If any damage is detected, replace the affected components immediately. By adhering to these safety precautions and following the manufacturer's installation and maintenance guidelines, you can ensure the safe and reliable operation of your wet niche luminaire for years to come. Remember that electricity and water are a dangerous combination. Always exercise caution when working with electrical equipment near water. If you are not comfortable working with electrical wiring, it is best to hire a qualified electrician to perform the installation or repairs. A qualified electrician will have the knowledge and experience to ensure that the work is done safely and in accordance with local electrical codes. In addition to the potting compound, it is also important to ensure that the polyvinyl chloride conduit is properly sealed to the forming shell. This can be achieved by using a watertight fitting or by applying a sealant to the joint between the conduit and the forming shell. The goal is to create a continuous watertight barrier that prevents water from entering the forming shell through the conduit. Another important consideration is the grounding of the wet niche luminaire. The forming shell must be properly grounded to prevent electrical shock in the event of a fault. The grounding wire should be connected to a grounding electrode that is buried in the ground near the pool. The grounding electrode should be made of copper or stainless steel and should be at least 8 feet long. The grounding wire should be sized according to the National Electrical Code NEC. The NEC provides specific requirements for grounding electrical equipment near water. It is important to consult the NEC to ensure that the grounding system is installed correctly. Regular maintenance is essential for ensuring the continued safe and reliable operation of a wet niche luminaire. The light fixture should be inspected regularly for any signs of damage or corrosion. The potting compound should be checked to ensure that it is still intact and has not deteriorated. The polyvinyl chloride conduit should be inspected for any cracks or leaks. If any problems are detected, they should be addressed immediately. Ignoring these maintenance tasks can lead to premature failure of the light fixture or, more seriously, pose a shock hazard to anyone in the pool. Always disconnect the power supply at the circuit breaker before performing any maintenance on the wet niche luminaire. This will prevent accidental electrical shock. If you are not comfortable performing the maintenance tasks yourself, it is best to hire a qualified electrician to do the work. A qualified electrician will have the knowledge and experience to ensure that the work is done safely and correctly. Wet niche luminaires are designed to provide safe and reliable underwater lighting for swimming pools. However, it is important to understand the design principles and safety precautions to ensure that the light fixture operates properly and does not pose a shock hazard. By following the guidelines outlined above, you can help to ensure the safe and enjoyable use of your swimming pool. Improperly installed or maintained pool lighting can be a serious safety hazard. Always take the necessary precautions to protect yourself and others from electrical shock. If you have any questions about the installation or maintenance of your wet niche luminaire, consult a qualified electrician. They can provide you with expert advice and ensure that your pool lighting system is safe and compliant with local electrical codes. Remember that safety is always the top priority when working with electricity, especially near water. Take the time to understand the risks and take the necessary precautions to protect yourself and others. The wet niche luminaire and forming shell are designed as a system to provide safe underwater lighting. The forming shell is typically made of a non-corrosive material such as plastic or stainless steel and is embedded in the pool wall. The luminaire is then mounted inside the forming shell. The space between the luminaire and the forming shell is filled with water, which helps to cool the luminaire and prevent it from overheating. The potting compound is used to seal the electrical connections and prevent water from entering the luminaire. The potting compound should be a waterproof and electrically insulating material that is compatible with the materials of the luminaire and the forming shell. The National Electrical Code NEC provides specific requirements for the installation of wet niche luminaires. These requirements are designed to ensure that the luminaires are installed safely and do not pose a shock hazard. Some of the key requirements include the following. Firstly, the luminaire must be listed for use in wet locations. Secondly, the luminaire must be installed in accordance with the manufacturer's instructions. Thirdly, the luminaire must be grounded properly. Fourthly, the wiring to the luminaire must be protected from damage. Fifthly, the luminaire must be installed at a depth of at least 18 inches below the water surface. Sixthly, the luminaire must be protected by ground fault circuit interrupter GFCI. A ground fault circuit interrupter GFCI is a safety device that is designed to protect people from electrical shock. The GFCI monitors the current flowing through the circuit, and if it detects a difference between the current flowing to the luminaire and the current returning from the luminaire, it will trip the circuit and shut off the power. This can prevent a serious electrical shock. It is important to test the GFCI regularly to ensure that it is working properly. The GFCI should be tested at least once a month. To test the GFCI, simply press the test button on the GFCI. The GFCI should trip and shut off the power. If the GFCI does not trip, it should be replaced immediately. In addition to the GFCI, it is also important to have the pool wiring inspected regularly by a qualified electrician. The electrician can check the wiring for any signs of damage or corrosion and make any necessary repairs. Regular inspections can help to prevent electrical problems and ensure the safety of the pool. The voltage drop in the wiring to the wet niche luminaire should also be considered. Voltage drop is the decrease in voltage that occurs as electricity flows through a wire. Excessive voltage drop can cause the luminaire to operate less efficiently and can even damage the luminaire. The amount of voltage drop depends on the length and size of the wire and the amount of current flowing through the wire. The NEC provides guidelines for the maximum allowable voltage drop in electrical circuits. It is important to ensure that the wiring to the wet niche luminaire is sized properly to minimize voltage drop. When selecting a wet niche luminaire, it is important to choose a luminaire that is energy efficient. Energy efficient luminaires use less electricity and can save you money on your electric bill. Look for luminaires that are labeled with the Energy Star logo. Energy Star luminaires meet strict energy efficiency guidelines set by the Environmental Protection Agency (EPA). In addition to saving money on your electric bill, energy-efficient luminaires also help to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. When disposing of a wet niche luminaire, it is important to do so properly. Some luminaires contain hazardous materials such as mercury. These materials can be harmful to the environment if they are not disposed of properly. Check with your local waste management agency for information on how to dispose of wet niche luminaires properly. When replacing a wet niche luminaire, it is important to choose a luminaire that is compatible with the existing forming shell. The luminaire should fit snugly into the forming shell and should be securely fastened. If the luminaire is not compatible with the forming shell, it may not be possible to install it safely. It is also important to ensure that the luminaire is properly aligned with the forming shell. If the luminaire is not aligned properly, it may not provide adequate illumination. The wet niche luminaire should be installed by a qualified electrician who is familiar with the NEC requirements for swimming pool lighting. The electrician will ensure that the luminaire is installed safely and in accordance with all applicable codes and regulations. A qualified electrician will also be able to provide you with advice on the best type of luminaire for your pool and how to maintain it properly. Remember that electrical safety is always the top priority when working with swimming pool lighting. Take the time to understand the risks and take the necessary precautions to protect yourself and others from electrical shock. If you have any questions about the installation or maintenance of your wet niche luminaire, consult a qualified electrician. They can provide you with expert advice and ensure that your pool lighting system is safe and compliant with local electrical codes. The forming shell is a critical component of the wet niche lighting system. It provides a secure and watertight enclosure for the luminaire and protects the electrical connections from water damage. The forming shell is typically made of a non-corrosive material such as plastic or stainless steel. The forming shell should be installed properly and securely in the pool wall. The forming shell should also be properly grounded to prevent electrical shock. The grounding wire should be connected to a grounding electrode that is buried in the ground near the pool. The grounding electrode should be made of copper or stainless steel and should be at least 8 feet long. The grounding wire should be sized according to the NEC. The NEC provides specific requirements for grounding electrical equipment near water. It is important to consult the NEC to ensure that the grounding system is installed correctly. The potting compound is used to seal the electrical connections inside the forming shell. The potting compound should be a waterproof and electrically insulating material that is compatible with the materials of the forming shell and the luminaire. The potting compound should be applied carefully to ensure that all of the electrical connections are completely sealed. The potting compound should also be checked regularly to ensure that it is still intact and has not deteriorated. If the potting compound is damaged or deteriorated, it should be replaced immediately. The polyvinyl chloride conduit is used to run the electrical wiring from the junction box to the forming shell. The polyvinyl chloride conduit should be installed properly and securely. The polyvinyl chloride conduit should also be sealed properly to prevent water from entering the forming shell. The polyvinyl chloride conduit should be inspected regularly for any cracks or leaks. If any cracks or leaks are detected, they should be repaired immediately. The junction box is used to make the electrical connections between the electrical wiring from the house and the electrical wiring to the wet niche luminaire. The junction box should be located at least 4 feet from the edge of the pool. The junction box should also be protected from the weather. The junction box should be inspected regularly for any signs of damage or corrosion. If any damage or corrosion is detected, it should be repaired immediately. The wet niche luminaire should be tested regularly to ensure that it is working properly. The luminaire should be turned on and off to ensure that it is operating correctly. The luminaire should also be inspected for any signs of damage or corrosion. If any damage or corrosion is detected, it should be repaired immediately. The water in the pool should be tested regularly to ensure that it is properly balanced. Improperly balanced water can damage the wet niche luminaire and other pool equipment. The water should be tested for pH, alkalinity, calcium hardness, and chlorine levels. The water should be adjusted as needed to maintain proper balance. The pool should be cleaned regularly to remove debris and algae. Debris and algae can damage the wet niche luminaire and other pool equipment. The pool should be vacuumed and brushed regularly. The filter should also be cleaned regularly. The wet niche luminaire is an important part of the swimming pool. By following the guidelines outlined above, you can help to ensure that the luminaire operates safely and efficiently for many years. Remember that electrical safety is always the top priority when working with swimming pool lighting. Take the time to understand the risks and take the necessary precautions to protect yourself and others from electrical shock. If you have any questions about the installation or maintenance of your wet niche luminaire, consult a qualified electrician. They can provide you with expert advice and ensure that your pool lighting system is safe and compliant with local electrical codes. Always consult the latest edition of the National Electrical Code (NEC) for the most up-to-date requirements for swimming pool lighting. Local codes may also apply, so be sure to check with your local building department.